Hello and welcome back to my RC channel. I'm AndyRC and today I'm going to be checking out the HappyModel Mobula6 HD edition. It comes with the Runcam Split 3 Lite, meaning that the FPV feed is still analog, so it's not DJI HD, but the camera also records in 1080p at the same time to a micro SD card, which you have to provide yourself. So this one's going to be more of a cruiser than the original Mobula6 because it's only available with 802 19,000 kV motors, and it's heavier, so in large outdoor spaces I would expect a lot of yaw washout when performing aggressive acro maneuvers. But if you'd have told me when I started this hobby that one day there will be a 65mm brushless model with an on-screen display that you could happily fly around the house and bring back 1080p 60 HD footage, I wouldn't have believed you. The frame is the same as the first one, which I like. I've already mentioned the motors, but they are actually a different style of motor to the non-HD version. But the props are the same Gemfan 1219s, and the all-in-one board is the Crazy Bee F4 Lite, which has BL-HALIS 4-in-1 ESCs rated to 5 amps, along with an F4 flight controller, a 25mW VTX and an FrSky D8 SPI receiver, although you can buy it with a FlySky, Spectrum or Crossfire receiver. The Betaflight was set up pretty nice. They are still rocking version 3.57, so there's no JESC. The only thing to take note of in the config tab is the props out configuration if you need to replace a propeller. But other than that, there's nothing I would change. I've been hearing from some people that the Betaflight settings are getting wiped if you let the voltage of the LiPo get too low. And while I haven't experienced this myself, you can set the battery warning voltage to 3 volts. It looks like they've come up with their own PIDs, but the rates are just the stock Betaflight values. And the modes tab was okay, apart from the lack of lost model alarm via D-shot commands, so I've added that. And the on-screen display wasn't bad either. I'd probably just add the VTX channel info on there. Then in the CLI you can type dump and copy everything to a text file, so you can paste the settings back in if you're having problems with Betaflight resetting. They're using a solid pin PH2 connector, and you're given 4 250mA high volt LiPos, which fit nicely in the frame this time, although the non-HD version comes with 300mAh LiPos, so I can't imagine the flight times are going to be much to shout about. Its dry weight with a micro SD card is 27 grams, and with one of the included LiPos its all-up weight is 34 grams. The micro SD card slot is difficult to get to. You have to get the angle just right, otherwise your card will end up getting stuck between the stack, and there's no protection, so if you have a heavy crash the card could end up pinging out. I did receive the control board for the split camera, but some people are reporting that theirs didn't come with one. The frame gets in the way of the connector, so you have to bend it down. There were just a couple of things to note in the camera settings. The field of view is set to 4:3, but the camera has a 16:9 sensor, so if you have 16:9 goggles, it's best to switch because you will get a wider field of view as well as a correct aspect ratio. The light frequency is set to 50 Hz, which is correct for where I live, but if you live in a country where the power frequency is 60 Hz and you are flying indoors, you might end up with some flicker in your video feed. The model's on-screen display also annoyingly gets in the way of the camera settings, but I could just about manage. The video auto-records as soon as you power up the model if a micro SD card is inserted, and it's best to stop the recording using the button on the side when you land. However, it does save the footage if you pull the battery without pressing the button. I don't know why HappyModel do this, but they haven't put a supporting strut again at the front of the canopy, so I can move it up and down with my hands, which will definitely produce jello if you want to fly around your garden on a sunny day. Left in the box is a spare set of props as well as a prop remover, along with a Phillips screwdriver and some spare screws. You're also given a USB charger and a manual. So it is 5:30 in the morning. I'm up early because the weather report said 0 km/h of wind, and it was correct. I wanted to mimic what it would be like flying aggressive acro with this model at the indoor sports. Also, this is the closest I can get because it is closed. So I want you to pay attention to the throttle value. You can see there 50 to 60% to get a hover. I'm going to go up on the throttle and then back down to 50 to 60% on the recovery, but then I drop the throttle down to 20% just very quickly and I get a yaw washout. So it seems when there is zero wind, you can actually control and do aggressive acro with this model, as long as you make sure that you give it a lot of throttle on the recovery. So I'm going to go here again. You can see that when I come out of the roll that I am at about 50 to 60% throttle, but any lower than that, and then when you start to drop it, you start getting your washout. I think I even managed to do a loop, so 100% there, and again 100% on the recovery, and a roll, and just a little bit of your washout there. So the HD footage actually is looking a little bit darker, and that is because, well, it is quite dark, you know, it's early in the morning, of course, but I did find in general that the FPV feed was more accurate when it came to the dynamic range than the HD feed itself. So talking more about the DVR, there's a little bit of noise there feeding through from the ESCs, which I think was on the first Mobula 6, the non-HD edition. Just flying around the trees here, doing some proximity, no problems with latency whatsoever. And in terms of the view from the FPV feed, I thought it was very good. These split cameras are notorious for having a bad feed, but I thought this was absolutely fine. And the HD feed, I did notice a little bit of vignetting in the bottom right hand corner, and I think this is getting missed on a lot of YouTube channels because that's where the subscribe button is, or your icon or whatever. But look at that, we've only got a 2.5 minute flight time there, and we are at 3 volts, so not a great flight time outdoors. Now I just want to go back and show you some more of the HD footage from that flight because, well, it was a short flight, but you'll notice that there's no Jallo feeding through to the camera, but it does look a little bit blurry, and that's because it's too early in the morning for there to be enough light to cause any Jallo. But when there are vibrations feeding through to the camera, it does manifest itself as blur rather than Jallo. So I did a flight a couple of hours later, and it's not a particular sunny day, it's overcast, but as you can see there is plenty of Jallo in the recorded footage now, so I can only imagine on a sunny day how much worse this would be. There's also onboard audio as well, but it's not very good. I'll let you have a little listen to it, but mind your ears. And I just want to show you a little bit of this clip because it was taken even later in the day where the wind had gotten up to around about 6 miles per hour, and at that point my throttle control could no longer save the model from a yaw washout even when I gave it 100% throttle. So it's really interesting, this yaw washout issue. It's definitely a power to weight thing, so when the wind gets up then the model's fighting against the wind as well as lack of power, and there is just nothing you can do. So unless it's a really calm day, then I would not fly this model outside. This is a flight that I did indoors, so I flattened the camera, which is why you can see the protectors in shot. This is actually the first flight that I did indoors with this model, so I'm a little bit rusty, and it's the only room that I can fly in because the house is full of people due to the current situation. So you can see I'm a little bit wonky on the sticks, but I eventually settle in and I can get through these really tight spaces here. So look at the throttle value, it's 60%, and that is just to get a hover indoors with zero wind. So I think if you see anybody doing extreme acro with this guy, then just watch out for them being cut down to, you know, 10 or 20-second clips, because if you go 100% throttle on this guy, then you're gonna get like a minute flight time, maybe a sub 1 minute flight time, and there is no getting away from that yaw washout even when there is zero wind. But when it comes to latency, absolutely no problems at all. This is where the model should be flown, in my opinion, indoors, and its latency has got to be lower than 40 milliseconds, because any lower than that, and I can't usually tell. If you are a seasoned racer, then you will tell, but you can see I'm knocking a couple of these posts, but that's not because of the latency, that is my lack of practice flying in here recently. Look at that, 6 AM dedication to the hobby. But as you can see, the FPV feed has got a higher exposure than the HD feed again. The HD feed looks darker, so that must be something that they have set up with the camera. But look at this, getting through the gaps, and I just knocked the table there. Yeah, it's very tiny gaps that this thing can get under. The one underneath the chair is the most difficult, this one, because you've got the reflection of the air bouncing back through the propellers, and it sort of bobs along the ground, but you don't actually hit the ground. It feels like you're hitting the ground. Same through here really as well. So yeah, I really like this model. I think it is worth the money. I really wish that they had put a brace on that front part of the canopy. That would have sorted the jello out and made it perfect. I wish the flight times were a little bit better. It'd be interesting to get JESC on there to see if it improves it. I did try a 300 milliamp hour LiPo and the flight time was identical, so I guess at this weight it can't perform any better and you get diminishing returns. So we're coming up to a 3-minute flight time here and it's nearly time to land. So that is my review of the Mobula 6 HD. I'll put links in the video description if you wish to get one, as well as a pinned comment. And as always, thanks so much for watching. Please continue to subscribe. Cheers.